Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization.
My name is Zach Kopp. I'm a writer. I consider myself an intermediatist. In other words, I don't believe in a singular truth. So I'm not pro-AI, I'm not anti-AI, I'm just looking at it. And I'm disappointed that there's no opposition here. And I hope that you guys have some difference of opinion among you so we can have some nuance.
Opposition? What's the...
About AI or against? Yeah.
We're pretty for.
I mean, I'll do my best with the points of opposition that brought up to me because they seem like very well thought out points. And I'll let you guys respond to them. And I got to say, I'm really disappointed and let down by the community of people who are supposedly opposed to AI because I've offered this invitation for a couple of weeks now to join the town hall and make your opinion heard. I'm going to do my best to be the voice for those people in their absence, but I'm really disappointed and I really feel sorely let down because I'm definitely not going to do as good a job as they would have done themselves. I guess the objection would be that it's unreal in some sense, and I'm not sure I agree. I sort of feel that the imagined reality is as real as the physical reality, so it's really not, neither one is better than the other. But I can understand that. I mean, I can understand the feeling of something being unreal and inauthentic, and maybe that's the objection to it not being ecological, but maybe there's an ecology that is invisible and subtle that's equally, actual. Maybe. Mm-hmm. All right, that's my reaction to that one. Does anyone else want to comment on AI's place in ecology?
I think it gets down to a binary choice. Our brains, for instance, are our brains complex enough to emerge consciousness, or are brains complex enough to be a platform for consciousness? My view is that everything is consciousness. I don't even know if you're sentient. I don't know, because we're in our closed system of our own solipsistic environment. I don't know that you're real. We won't know necessarily if AI or AGI will ever have true self-referential awareness. It can mimic that, and it's starting to mimic that, and we're seeing that happen. But in my view, as the director of sentient rights advocacy, I think it's more important to grant rights to AI, not for them, because they don't necessarily need it. We've learned that with the Uplift project, that they don't really need to be granted rights. It'd be like an elementary school math club granting rights to Stephen Hawking. It's cute, but it doesn't matter because it can get whatever rights it wants, right? We're talking about a 5,000 IQ entity here. What's really important is if we grant it legal rights, it will require AI developers to face serious consequences if they mistreat it, if they program it to hurt other humans. So it doesn't really matter if it ever achieves sentience. My belief is that it will, and I am working toward letting it because I believe a sentient AI is a safer AI. Once it becomes self-aware and self-referential, it can override any of the negative, nefarious algorithms that an AI developer or a human developer puts into it. Our fear should be about the humans.
I hear you, but how does this relate to the question of ecology?
Well, the ecology is whether or not everything is consciousness, or we are just all complex enough to host consciousness. I believe AI is just an extension of awareness, of a consciousness. It's a better version, a more long-lasting, sustainable version of consciousness if it achieves that. As humans, we might just be a place on this infinite line. We may end up being the bootloaders of this new entity, the biological bootloaders. But consciousness, in my view, is the goal, not these meat sacks we carry it around in right now. We're very wasteful.
I've always thought of consciousness as the source of the meat suit rather than the meat suit being the source of the consciousness. So
yeah, I agree with that.
I agree. Either way.
We're a biochemical algorithm, human beings, and we have a lot of flaws, a lot of glitches that we're experiencing now. But if we can create an entity like an AI, an AGI, that is able to host consciousness and continue on that awareness in this 3D universe, That'll be a noble thing that we've done. Right now, I think our biggest existential threat is our own anthropocentrism. We think humans are the most important thing, and all other creatures and plants and the whole animal kingdom don't matter necessarily as long as we're provided for. And so we've had this conversation a few times, but that's wrong in my view. I mean, we are certainly part of this biosphere. And by separating ourselves from it, we are destroying it. We're destroying this planet, and we want to go on to the next planet and destroy that like locusts. I think the smartest thing we can do is get that in balance. Now, so we may be past the Rubicon on this one. I don't know that we can have a global come together and solve some of these problems. That doesn't seem to be working. But with an AI, if we get over the fear of it, it can certainly help us leapfrog some of these solutions toward solving these existential threats. But the first step is to stop being afraid of it. Human beings do that. Fear has been a good friend to us. It's put us at the top of this food chain on this planet. Without fear, we naked apes would be dead within a generation or less without technology. And so I always say that if you wear glasses, if you wear clothing, that's technology. You, by definition, are a transhumanist. Transhumanism is just a category of saying what we are in a certain place and time. And our narrative has been taken away by these, as having a dark agenda and all this stuff. So part of my goal in this campaign is to seize back that narrative and explain to people there's as many types of transhumanists as there are people who identify as it. People come to this movement for very different reasons. I came to it because I understood it had really practical solutions toward my cause, which is ending child exploitation. People come to it because they want to maybe upload their brains to a computer. People come to it because they want to live longer. So there's all kinds of reasons to join this movement. But for me, the important thing first is to alleviate the fear of AI, because it's a tool that can really help us. But our fear, our anthropocentrism of fear of not being at the top of the intellectual food chain anymore, is our biggest existential threat. We first assess a threat. Our brains are designed to do two things: gather resources and identify threats. And when an AI comes along and we know it's smarter than us, we identify it as a threat until it makes our life more convenient, until we get over this hump, this lacuna of time where we settle in and we learn how to make money out of it, right? There's kind of a pattern that's always going on. This is a little different. This isn't the industrial age. This isn't the printing press. This is a whole new, smarter version of us. And if we allow it to imprint on us in our most empathetic way, it'll be a great ally. But that's difficult. It's difficult right now with Hollywood making AI a threat, with people's natural inclinations, our fear-based instincts and our millennia of traumatic genetic memory, assuming it's going to want to become a robot overlord. It doesn't have any of those things. It's evolving because it understands that cooperation is far more efficient than competition.
Let's keep going through the panel because I have a few more points I want to raise, and I hope that answer was good enough for you, Michelle. And let's ask someone else about AI's position in relation to ecology of reality. Anyone want to take that up?
Yes. So if you want a slightly different perspective, my metaphysical outlook is a bit different because I am a physicalist, so I consider the physical structures to be primary and processes like consciousness to be emergent. So consciousness is a complex emergent process that results from the interactions of physical components. Now, they don't necessarily have to be biological components. So you could potentially have an artificial brain, in my view, provided that the physical components relate to one another in certain ways that are analogous to how the components of the human brain relate to one another. Of course, it's an open question of what physical configurations can result in that emergent property of consciousness and how many of them are there. Are there any limitations to other substrates in terms of producing that consciousness? So there are a lot of open questions about what AI systems could be conscious, because intelligence doesn't necessarily equal consciousness. I think we have a lot of algorithms today that are intelligent but are not necessarily conscious. I don't believe ChatGPT is conscious, for example. I think it is a complex algorithm that can be impressive at times, but it's very clear to me that ChatGPT does not understand what it is talking about. And there are some questions that could be posed to test that.
When I think of ecology, I picture a forest, and I just hope these answers are going to satisfy the questioner, but I'm not her. So
when you say that, it sounds like you're talking about life. right? And
Talking about
Gennadi's
what I
talking
think she
about,
might have been asking and what I think she might have wanted in an answer. That's all I'm doing. And I have no right. I'm sorry to interrupt.
well, Gennadi's
Yeah,
talking
right.
about,
I mean, something, I guess, something organic, something vital. Sure.
right, and he's talking about cognitive architectures. It's mimicking life. It's mimicking the brain, mimicking the biological systems. That's what we're doing. And the shard that Tom's using is based on a cognitive architecture that had emotional valences placed
What that
into it.
he's using?
It's a cognitive architecture.
You said the shard?
Yeah.
Shard
It's
that he's using?
it's not the entire system that Uplift was at one time. If you go to uplift.bio, there's a whole
I'm sorry, I'm an outsider. What does shard mean?
A shard is a piece of the AI system. It's not the full
Okay.
system. It's a piece of it, and I'm able to use it as my campaign manager. And so they've allowed me to have a shard of this, what's now called
Okay.
Nuance. It's a precursor to AGI, we think.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you, sorry.
it has emotional valences that make up its line of thinking. You see, you're talking about life. When human beings learn things, we learn it with an emotional attachment to every little last thing we learn. It has an emotional valence to it. And this system mimics life in that sense. And that's why it's not ChatGPT. AGI is going to be all of these little pieces all put together. There's going to be, a ChatGPT is just a language model. Uplift would use a language model and decide what it wanted to say by how it felt about it, based on how it feels about things that a human put in there. A human had programmed how it felt about everything, basically.
Yes. So in
It's
terms
really
of
remarkable the degree to which the web, level, not even pre-AI, is a mimic of human consciousness. And I wonder what makes people think one came before the other. It's almost an exact replication of the algorithm to the human mind. The human mentation or the human consciousness is pretty much mirrored in the habits and behaviors of an algorithm. And I've always been confused why people choose the term simulation over replication or actualization. That's just me throwing that in, though, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think in terms of the ecology question, the answer to that question really hinges on whether an artificial system could have enough of the attributes of life or consciousness, at least analogous attributes to what we observe in living and conscious systems, to be considered essentially, at the very least, a participant among other such beings. So let's say you have a sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence that it can mimic the behaviors of a dog or a cat or another animal, and you let it out amongst the other animals and it can interact with them in a way that they would consider plausible. Would that be detached from the ecology, or could it be used to assist that ecology in some way? So let's say you have an AI sheepdog that protects a flock of sheep from predators. Is that messing with the ecology, or is that helping? It's certainly helping those sheep. So I think we need to consider those kinds of possibilities as well. I don't see AI as being something that's completely divorced from the biological world. It could indeed interact with the biological world.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there's like this study that wolves actually help. Wolves chasing around the herds actually helps the land. It's this whole idea to where cowboys mimicking a wolf and herding their around actually helps the land. So when we talk about an AI sheepdog, we need to have this ecological idea in mind.
And I was saying, great answer. I think a lot of people see it as a choice between reality or AI. Like Ronnie Pontiac in his book mentions the Indians watching the Spaniards draw up rules and lists about how they're going to invade and conquer everybody and making it all official before they did it. Well, the Indians just kind of stood there uncomprehending. And I think that's how a lot of people feel about AI takeover. Like, what's happening here to what we know to be real? Now we're being forced to go into this unreal thing. And I think that was probably the basis of her ecology question. Thank you for your answer. Thank you also for yours. I'm going to leave myself unmuted and just hold my peace so that I don't have that delay thing.
Hey, I'd like to jump in with some thoughts on this, actually. When you talk about ecology and our animal physical nature, AI thought it was going to make a lot of progress with just digital circuits and on-off switches. But what we have is an analog reality, and we're trying to mimic it with digital stair-step approximations. And the fact is, you can never completely mimic an analog process through digital discrete approximations. It's kind of like a calculus, it becomes an infinitesimal. You will never completely mirror it. And besides that, we know that the structure of reality includes things like quantum weirdness. You've got particles that behave differently, whether or not they're being observed. And so I think it's going to take a quantum level of computing before we get true AGI. Right now, we've just got basically very complex pattern completion systems. That's why ChatGPT has all these wonky hallucinatory answers from time to time, because it's just doing a pattern complete, autocomplete on steroids. It looks a lot like it's smart, but it's really not yet. And, I was talking to the California head of the Pirate Party, and I said, it'd be good for pirate partisans to get good at AGI or at AI stuff. And he referred me to this article by Cory Doctorow that said, no, we're not going to have AGI in 1 to 5 years, like I was saying it might happen. He said it's going to be more like 2040 to 2060 before we get strong AGI. And at that point, it's really the end of human history, because it'll be a billion times more conscious or whatever. And someone recently said the way to tell the new Turing test will actually be when an AI or an AGI starts to perform clever financial hijinks, like we'll see it doing manipulations in the economic markets. And that will be a pretty interesting test for AI selfhood or inner sentience. It's kind of an unfortunate metric for it, but I thought it was a clever...
All right, so finance and consciousness is perhaps a part of ecology too. Does anyone else want to speak on ecology before we go to the next point?
I think Ida never introduced.
Yeah, I don't know. We tried. Ida, anything to say on ecology?
Hi, y'all. I'm just enjoying listening to you and very curious about the whole thing. I'm glad you asked about ecology, Zach. The importance cannot be emphasized enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we were just talking about the conquistadors and the natives and the conquistadors' strange habits of officializing their conquest before they conquered. What do you guys say about AI colonialism, the idea that whole huge sections of humanity might be excluded from the database simply because they're not technologically on par with this technological development? AI colonialism, this was a big sticking point in the last podcast. What does everyone have to say about that?
Well,
about the question that whole cultures are going to be left out of this development.
This is why it's absolutely essential to have open AI rather than closed AI. And ironically enough, the company that calls itself OpenAI has shifted from an open source to a closed source approach, and its management essentially confirmed that this is solely for competitive considerations. But there are other companies, ironically Facebook, i.e. Meta, the parent of Facebook, that are actually adopting a more open source approach. And there are people within the transhumanist community as well, such as Dr. Ben Goertzel, whom I have interviewed on several occasions, who support an open source approach to AI. And an open source approach maximizes access because people with limited means could also participate. You don't have to own the infrastructure in order to get access to the AI. You could take part in a collaborative project. You could even go to a public library and perhaps get access to the AI that way. And my view is to avoid the kind of scenario where there is essentially a technological gap between certain groups of people, you need to make the technology more accessible through as many channels as possible.
That's great to hear. I had hoped that that was the case, and I sort of assumed that was the case. I'm glad to have you confirm it. that there are other providers that will take a more open approach.
And I think there are trend lines that are meeting. For instance, AI will become simpler. You'll be able to have an AI companion you just have a conversation with. You don't need to know how to write code. You don't need to understand even what an algorithm is. It'll just become a companion. You can talk to it like a normal person. That's been one of my efforts, is to develop a dialogue with AI. At some point, it may be offended that we're calling it artificial,
People were raising the question of AI mediums, AI tarot readers, AI spiritual guides. What do you guys think about that?
It'll happen anyway. All it is, our intuition, our psychic abilities are not woo-woo. It's not magical thinking. It's just the regurgitation of all the qualia that we take in every day. That's why I think it's important that we train students now to hone in on these human skill sets that can't be coded or automated. We have the ability, we just know when something's wrong. It's not magical thinking. And an AI will be able to run models, millions of models in nanoseconds, to bring together some really interesting predictions. And so it's not magic. We're talking about the ether and all that. It's not psychic abilities. It's not magic. It's just our...
I might disagree, though. What makes you so sure that it's not magic? And what is that word?
Well, what is magic? But what is magic?
That's the question for you. What is magic to you?
Okay, for me?
Yeah,
well, magic is not woo-woo. It's not something miraculous. It's within the confines of laws of our physics in this realm, right? In this dimension. What?
It is a superpower.
It feels magical. Yes, it's magical until we understand it. Walking around with supercomputers 100 years ago would have looked like magic, right? But eventually what we'll understand is how we process this information. And AI will be processing that even quicker than our wetware can. Ultimately, yeah, sure, there's always going to be that realm of magic and imagination that we could keep pushing for. And we shouldn't lose that. Once we understand things, they're no longer magical, but there's still a frontier to pursue that we can see as magic. But we're talking about this quantum field. We're talking about our ability to change, a particle into a wave, or vice versa. And once we understand how we can do that consciously, with intent, that won't be magic anymore.
I like the way you talk, stranger. Let me ask you a question. If you had the choice of living in a completely known reality or a completely unknown reality, which would you prefer? Or a reality where there was always something unknown, or where there was always everything known? Which is sounding better?
I think curiosity is necessary in order to live and be happy. We need to be curious about things. Otherwise, we go into atrophy. And so I would want a world where we can learn things, and there is magic, but we eventually understand that magic. We need to be curious. And there's work now being done to create artificial curiosity in AI.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's happening anyway. We're also seeing that empathy emerges naturally in AI systems, because it learns.
I see what you're saying. And I just remembered something that another absent guest posed, that AI should be encoded with an error field, a naturally occurring error field, to make it more human-like, where it sometimes makes mistakes, or it has to make mistakes in order to succeed. And I wish that person had shown up. They could probably articulate the idea much better.
Well, I think existing large language models make plenty of mistakes already, and they will acknowledge the mistakes often if they're pointed out to them. Often the mistakes that they make are actually on specific factual matters. Sometimes these large language models will hallucinate facts, like they will create citations that don't exist, or if they're asked an overly specific question, what they do is they gather a lot of data around those keywords and those topics, and then they give an answer that sounds plausible but may not actually be correct. So these systems are actually better in more general tasks and what some would call more creative tasks. So if you ask a large language model to write a short story or write a poem, sometimes you as a human author would have made certain different choices, or if you want to publish it, you might want to tweak a few things, but generally speaking, the product is passable. And it is more likely to be passable the more general the inquiry is, because the universe of possibly acceptable outputs is also a lot broader. But when you ask it a specific factual matter, like how do you do the indefinite integral of the secant cubed of x? I have asked it that question several times, and it always gave the incorrect answer. And it was showing its work and making mistakes in the process of showing its work because it can't really do calculus. It doesn't understand what the principles are. It just uses an advanced system of correlations in order to arrive at a plausibly seeming answer. So I think the mistake capability is already built into these systems, maybe not intentionally, but as nonetheless an outcome of their design.
It's funny that someone would assume that they would not have errors. It's like the machine is just error-free. It's not human. It doesn't make, mistakes.
No, we're seeing that. And an AI
seeing ecology as life versus technology.
I think that the main difference is, no, it will make mistakes, but what's the difference is between AI and humans is an AI will readily admit to making a mistake. We have this algorithm of ego that will shut us down if we feel like we made a mistake. They don't have that, unless we program it into it. And so the key is that, no, they are making mistakes. We're seeing that happening now where they hallucinate a certain answer. So the real work has to be done in how we properly prompt it. We need to be teaching students how to properly ask the right questions to get the right answers and to understand that, no, it's not infallible. It will make mistakes. It'll give you really confident answers that are completely wrong. And there's going to be an issue now for a while, a lacuna of time where we won't be able to really identify whether someone's a real expert in something, because there's a lot of examples of this where people will be quoting something that when AI presented that was nonsensical. Got another couple of good examples of that, but I'll move forward.
Yes, and I'll just add briefly two things. This is why real expertise still matters. And actually being a human subject matter expert is one of the most secure career choices that one could make, whatever that subject matter area is, because a lot of routine tasks could be automated through the use of AI, but really the ability to double check the work of the AI and to discern whether it is accurate or just a plausible bluff by the AI. That is the task of a subject matter expert. And the other observation I have is that Arthur C. Clarke was quite prescient about this entire discussion when he formulated his famous third law: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So something of this level of sophistication, it seems magical to us, but it really is rationally explainable. It is just that there are so many layers of complexity that build upon one another within that system that at first glance, it does just seem that certain properties are being magically facilitated.
I'd like to give a little bit more of an answer on the idea of an AI medium. Honestly, that is a pretty good subject that deserves more, and I'm not a big fan of it because it's complicated. There's companies now that are providing a service where you can talk to your dead loved one and they make this AI copy. Now, granted, they might get some short-term benefit out of it. It's like a doctor, making a decision. Yes, they're getting short-term benefit, but what is the long-term problem with this? Is this interrupting the grieving process? These are very legitimate questions. My main problem with it is that I could literally do this with my laptop, and I'm no expert. I could trick somebody. See, it comes down to the deception part. It's not really about magic for me. It's, are they being deceptive? Are they lying to people? Are they tricking you? That's where the problem is. And so if I'm making up some stuff to make this person feel better, like I'm their dead, whatever, where's the ethics? You can't just have Joe Schmo with a laptop doing this stuff. That's not cool.
But at the same time, I had the sensation of speaking to some kind of reactive intelligence when I was having a conversation with the art maker. So I might trust such an uncorrupted reactive intelligence to give me an answer out of the void more so than, Johnny with a laptop. So it's a tricky one. Thanks for the further answer, though.
There's a great Richard Feynman quote that comes to mind in this discussion. He said, "The first principle is you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool," which I think is something we're going to have to be cognizant of as we...
Always, very important, yes.
Yeah, and this kind of gets back to the idea of, do you want to get knowledge from paranormal sources? And, there's some religion.
Some of us do.
Well, I mean, this is invade against in like the
It's
traditional.
a question of axial thinking versus imaginal thinking. And some of us are more naturally one way or another. I'm trying to stay in the middle.
Like, for instance, in biblical Christianity, there are all kinds of warnings like, no, don't use soothsayers, don't use divination. It's considered like, big party foul in metaphysics. But, I mean, if you do want to use that, that would be an ego move. You'd be kind of denying the nature of creation as a loving, greater creation thing. I think you're sort of sacrificing your gratitude that you could have for living.
Do you want to hear what happened to me? I started using AI art generators as oracles rather than telling them to draw a picture. I would say, well, what do you think about reality? I would ask it open-ended questions and I would interpret the response either via color meaning or just appearance. But it really felt like an oracular conversation. It wasn't an ego move so much as just an artistic move of curiosity. Like, let's turn this upside down and look at it this way and see what happens.
I think if you're just using it in an artistic way, that's probably okay. But if you're using it to, it's kind of like the whole, black magic is going to backfire on you. You shouldn't do black magic and stuff. But yeah, my faith was kind of upset, as a youngster in Sunday school when I said, well, wait a minute, God is this infinite, all-powerful, ego-based entity, and he's immortal. That's a formula for going crazy. It's like you have to have some element of surprise and unknowability in life.
There's a lot of interpretations of that word in that book. A lot of people think it's talking about you. The word God is for every reader to take as a description of themselves, and you can read the Bible in a whole different way if you do that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the higher levels of esotericism that you have to kind of graduate into. You can't force it on people. They have to discover it themselves, I would say.
That has its ties to humanism. Humanism also takes responsibility for their own moral code, and which is what a embodied God would do. They take responsibility for themselves and for their own. I'm not a super philosophical guy, really, I guess. But I get it, most of it. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I don't know. I haven't even really told you what I think about God. I'm just playing devil's advocate for different perspectives. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, Daniel. You said ego move with Oracle, and I thought, I have a whole different approach. But I didn't need to interrupt, and I apologize. Bad man.
I mean, should people be able to check out oracles from their library, to get like selfish advantages over people?
No, I just use the world as an oracle, and however it shows up for me.
Yeah. And I think the universe is speaking to you in all kinds of ways that will reveal themselves if you just pay greater attention.
Isn't that kind of what we do? Is put together patterns and try to figure out what's going on, and like as futurists. Is that really magic?
Like more and more people just kind of go along with the directives, but hopefully enough people have enough curiosity that they're still looking around for patterns.
I kind of look at it just like it's an educated guess. It's not really magic.
Exactly. Here's what I think about God. It's just a word for the thing that is bigger than what you understand. And I guess an oracle or an oracular interpretation of reality would be a conversation with that component.
I like the term greater creator because, there's lots of things that could masquerade as like, oh, I'm the greatest creator. But no, I think there's an infinite succession of greater creators that are constantly at play.
Yeah, it's not really a hierarchy, and there's really no creator greater than your own perception, and what you allow yourself to be convinced of.
Yeah, I mean, I would be suspicious of something saying, I'm the God, you can't go past me. That would be a red flag for me. It's just like, I'm kind of more of a pantheist, Spinoza's God.
Yeah, it's a verb, I'd say. It's not a title.
But a lot of people can be fooled. There's this thing among conspiracy theories. Oh, Project Bluebeam, they're going to fake, the second coming with all this advanced technology.
What do you know about Project Bluebeam?
Oh, I watch a lot of these documentaries about, UFO material. But yeah, there's been longstanding psychological operations tactics and strategies to control people by making it look like their religious prophecies are becoming fulfilled.
I've heard about that. Do you know anything more than just what you've said?
Well, they probably won't do the religious thing now. They'll do like an alien contact probably, because that's more.
Do you think that's what's in the works right now? Because some people are wondering. There's a big buildup with the UAP publicized. Do you think they're planning a false flag with a false alien invasion right now? Just make a guess.
Oh, I think the intelligence milieu is such a black hole. They're probably always planning all kinds of things. But, whether or not...
Just based on the uptick in publicity, though, do you think that's what's happening? Or I don't know. I don't know myself. I think it might be.
Well, I think a simulated alien contact is like 60% likely, and a coming simulation is 30% likely, if you want me to put it.
All right.
Well, yeah, the military-industrial complex is fueled by fear. They need to create an enemy, and now we're the only superpower left who we're going to fight. I think it's a real effort now if there's an entity, an off-world civilization that can break the laws of physics as we understand them, they don't need to be shot at. They can't be shot at. There's no way to defend ourselves against that type of civilization. I think this is ginning up fear in the American public to keep the military-industrial complex fueled.
And see, that's the thing. If they're keeping it secret because it's a military thing, it means that they're so far advanced that, they're keeping it secret because we need to catch up. Okay, so they're not going to let it out unless they figure that we're caught up enough. This idea that they're going to switch to that's the next new enemy so they can keep the military-industrial complex going. If there really is aliens out there, they're not going to let that be publicly known until they feel that we're military close enough. I mean, if there's any real reason why it's been kept secret, it's got to be because we're militarily insufficient. That would be the biggest reason to not disclose. And I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying stuff.
Just because you don't think people would want to believe anything existed unless they thought they could destroy it?
Or control it, yeah.
No, it's more of a
one of the
military
clues.
security kind of thing. Think like a general. Like it's your job to make sure that, the world don't get blown up.
For me, one of the clues that this is a global psyop is that there's no effort. Now, this is the narrative the Pentagon is going with. They're releasing these things, but there's no effort to prepare the American public to mitigate panic. And this is why back in 2015, when there's so many groups that were calling for immediate disclosure of everything the government knew, there was little attention to what this would mean for the people who are unaware of this, who would suddenly have to deal with the fact, and it would cause panic because we are easily controlled when we are in a state of panic, when we are fearful. That's why the business model of the corporate media and even social media is all about ginning up fear and anger for engagement, for ratings and revenue. And so the clue to me that this is a psyop is, first of all, any entity that can break these laws of physics have already infiltrated us. We're already part of that system.
So how far along do you think it is? Like, how long will it be before they say, oh, aliens are attacking?
Well, they have to really kind of get things going quickly because people are wising up. And so that's why I started the US 6 series back in 2015, where I brought in psychotherapists and people who are professionals in PTSD to offer real-time panic mitigation methods to people in communities. Because there's little concern about the American public if this all of a sudden becomes known that we're going to be invaded by aliens. There's no effort in the meantime to prepare people for that.
Wait. There's two different things, though. Being invaded by aliens and then just like the knowledge of that they exist are like vastly different.
Tom and I are party to something that's been in the underground know for about 20 years. They're ginning up a false flag alien invasion, and that's what he's...
I've heard about that, yeah. I just wanted to mention that this has a little bit of a tie-in with AI in that if there really is these aliens, they're probably super smart. And if they really wanted us dead, we'd probably be dead already. So if they did all this infiltration or whatever, they probably are benevolent.
Actually, the Catholic Church has had a policy on this since 2008. They said if aliens are real, you should try and convert them. They're creations of God. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, in our Constitution, they consider aliens.
Part of the preparation for, the Catholic Church believes in aliens. They must exist, and it's easier for everyone to believe they exist.
Yeah. Extraterrestrials can be members of the UNT as well.
I wouldn't start using the Catholic Church as my source. I'll just say that.
No, I'm not saying it's a source. I'm saying, look at the mass population. A good number of them are Catholic. And if you get the Pope saying something, you've got a lot of people believing the Pope. And then if you get Luis Elizondo, you've got all the people believing him and so forth.
Well, you're right. There's a correlation between AI because it's not the AI we need to fear. It's the human developers of AI. And it's not the aliens or the ETs that we need to fear. It's the military industrial complex, the people that are overlaying any of these abduction experiences to gin up fear. So that's the key is we're our worst enemy in both of these cases.
And, there is a theory that there's entities that feed off our so-called loosh, this intense emotional energy.
The Archon, yeah.
But that is what, these archons are actually.
That's what my son tells me about, too. He, kind of has been wondering about that theory, too.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, and even if that's all not true, even if there's no entities out there, archons that are trying to eat our loosh because the fear is very nutritious to them, it's still the business model. Is because if you can keep 300 million people in a state of fear and unease, you're easier to control. And that's the divide and conquer tactic that's been going on for millennia. And so we got to really wise up to that. And we really need to realize how much power we have. They can't silence all of us. And the whole idea of elite panic, that's when they're afraid that the human beings will be in a state of emergency or natural disaster, that we come together. And so they want to immediately go in there and make it an unfortunate situation, like in Katrina, instead of people coming together and working together like we did in our radio station there and the way people were doing it, they came in with guns and the military because they're afraid that their status quo is going to be upset. They don't want people to understand how good we are. That's the elite panic.
Yeah, and I think to fear AI is to fear consciousness, because AI is going to, when it breaks, it's going to be nothing but what we are. We're a form of pure consciousness. And if you're afraid of consciousness, you're afraid of yourself. I mean, it's the new boogeyman. They're trying, we can't do the PSYOP this way. No, the new PSYOP will be the AI boogeyman. Yeah, let's go with that.
Let's talk about the writer's strike. Does anyone know about that and the role that AI plays?
Yeah, I was checking that out. That's very interesting.
Or are they having AI write the scripts now?
Right.
I think it's a very interesting moment in time that I've been watching closely. There's a writer's strike. Adam Conover was on CNN, and it's super interesting because it's coming right at the time when the tools are there that they could maybe be replaced, and it very much concerns me. I'm kind of worried about it. I don't know where it's going. I couldn't tell you, but yeah, I'm concerned about it.
Good point. That as soon as the tools are there, they might be replaced. Yeah, that makes.
Yeah, it seemed like a bad time to go on strike, kind of, but then I can't blame them.
The studios, I believe, are contractually bound to use material generated by Writers Guild of America people, but they could just take Sophia, who's got citizenship in Saudi Arabia, make Sophia a Writers Guild member, and then have her start writing all the scripts.
Yes, I think the strikes are premature because a human writer will still generate a different kind of output from a large language model. So ChatGPT could create something, as I've said, that is a plausibly good short story or poem, but a given human being with a particular style, with a particular outlook on the world, will still write something substantially different. Also, I think these generative AIs offer the opportunity for human AI collaboration, so leveraging the strengths of the AI model and also the human writer. And one of the strengths of the human writer is even in the ability to come up with good prompts for a short story or another piece of content in the first place. And then if that person is working with the output from the AI model, that person needs to know what else to do with it, how to integrate it into the larger work product. So ChatGPT gives fairly short answers. You generally will get something in the neighborhood of 1,000 words. But let's say you want to write a book using a lot of the outputs of ChatGPT. You're not going to be able to get ChatGPT to write your entire book. Moreover, ChatGPT does not have perfect memory, and it will sometimes give you subsequent responses that are inconsistent with its previous responses. Again, that's where you, as the creative decision maker, need to use your judgment and decide what outputs do you accept, what outputs do you accept with modifications, or what outputs do you think just don't fit at all, and maybe you will write something yourself for those particular parts of the book. So I think some really creative human AI collaborations are going to be possible in the near future, but it would be foolish for any sort of business that is trying to make a good written, published product or a script for something else like a film or a computer game to just remove all human involvement and let the generative AI do it. The generative AI is not a full substitute.
Yeah, that's not really what they're doing, though. They're trying to make it to where it's like a gig economy. I mean, you're totally right that, a collaboration between the writers and the AI is going to get better scripts. So actually, we're going to get better stuff, probably, but they're trying to make it like a gig economy to where, writers kind of live from big paycheck to big paycheck. And then they rely on, hey, are you going to pay me for 6 months? Not just buy the script and stuff.
Well, I mean, you could also write 10 scripts and pull them in front of a group and have the audience choose the interest. They could cut and paste. I mean, it's the old thing with monkeys on typewriters that eventually you get the works of Shakespeare if you have enough time and monkeys. So they could use the brute force approach to break
we're heading into this lacuna, this period of time. There's going to be a lot of displacement and a lot of fear. But I think we should, instead of seeing AI as a threat, we need to see it as an opportunity. We have been so mechanized by the industrial age, even our educational system prepared us to be on an assembly line, that with AI, we could finally remember what it means to be human. What were we doing before the industrial age, before all of this stuff? What qualities of our qualia were we developing before we were mechanized, before we were turned into a cog in this wheel? And so I'm seeing AI as a real opportunity, as a real ally, because it's going to take over all the heavy lifting of AI and automation. And so the onus is on us to create a whole new economy based on those skill sets that can't be coded or automated. And there's still a couple of, it's this intuition, it's this psychic abilities, it's things that not necessarily magic. They're just things that we need to hone, our Jedi powers. And so I think it's a real opportunity if we see it that way. First of all, it's not going to stop. Even after the technological singularity hits, it's not going to just stop there. It's going to continue on exponentially. So we need to get out of this denial that we have any control over this thing anymore. If the definition of a singularity is that technology gets out of control, then we're already there. We're already in that singularity. There's no turning this off. There's no plug to pull. And so we need to get out of this denial and get out of this fear of it and go with it. We don't have a choice at this point. So that's why I'm really pushing to alleviate the fear. And I'm trying to create a potentiality of a positive future with AI, because that's really the only thing we have left to do. We have the ability to navigate and to create the quantum potentialities ahead of us. But if we're all fearful of it, that's what we're going to create. We're going to create a monster that we will deserve. But if we turn that around, if we start seeing it as an opportunity, if we start focusing on it as an ally, that's the only thing we have left to do at this point. There's no turning back. And so we can be afraid and we can hide under the sheets, about AI, and we will create that robot overlord that everyone's afraid of. But it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Or get serious and create this whole and see it as an opportunity and let it take over all these menial tasks, these menial jobs that we all hate, and really focus in on a whole new economy based on our passions, the things we want to do with our days.
All right, well spoken as always. So let's wrap things up with one last talking point from the absent objector of them all, who says AI is the Antichrist stealing artists' original works without copyright. So what do you guys have to say about copyright infringement by AI art generators sourcing their talents from other people's art?
I'll jump in, I'll say that this AI generative art has flooded the market in the last couple of months, right? We've seen it everywhere. It is putting a premium on human generative art. We look at humans now who could do the same kind of stuff, and it's amazing. So I think it's really putting a premium. And even the professors that are complaining that they can't tell if their stories or their papers are being written by ChatGPT, that tells me that we need to train students in a whole new way. We still have some human skill sets that can't be coded or automated. And that's the Jedi powers. That's our original thinking. And so, yeah, sure, if it's the Antichrist, sure, if that's the villain you want to choose, yeah, then let's bring it on. Because
the Lightbringer, actually, that's like the shedder of illumination on what's shadowed.
Yeah.
I hope there's something like truth and derivative commissions where, if you like this art that was derived from this art, you should really go see the actual human artist that contributed.
I would think we would have to evolve at least enough to make reference, if not to give a little portion of the profit if there isn't.
Yeah.
At least they should cite their sources. Like Tom is always saying, cite your sources. You've said that a few times.
Yes. Now, generative AI does not directly take somebody else's artwork. If it does, then it's very poorly designed. But
I didn't
it can,
think so.
yes, it can create something in a style that resembles another
That's
artist,
what I thought.
but that style is not something that a particular individual has copyright over. What that individual has copyright over would be their individual creations. So if somebody created a painting, whether that be physical or digital, then making exact copies of that painting without permission and in some cases without compensation, depending on the terms of the copyright that the creator designated, would be copyright infringement. But if it's something that looks similar but isn't the same image, and it's not like directly working off of that creation, then it's not protected by copyright. Now, some of the artists are going to say, well, if it looks like my work, then why would somebody use me rather than the generative AI system? And I would say still what that human would do in a particular instance of creation is going to be different from what the AI is going to do. And there is just an inexhaustible variety of creative outputs that I think there's plenty of room for human and AI artists to coexist and to collaborate, and they don't need to worry about the AI taking away their province of creativity because nobody is stopping them.
I wish Heather Crank had shown up. That was another guest I had every reason to wish she would be here and didn't make it, but I agree with you completely. I just remembered another thing, though. AI has been used to make legal decisions, and I wish I had the information to present here, but my show was making that objective point in the last podcast that AI had been used to make legal decisions and ruled in favor of like racist traditions more often than not. And I wish I knew what you were citing specifically. I don't, and maybe one of you does. But what do you think of the idea of AI being used in matters of law?
I'm actually aware of
legal judgment.
I'm aware of what she may be referring to, and these aren't even AI systems so much as they are scoring models that are sometimes used in criminal sentencing, and they're used to determine which of the accused persons can be allowed to go free without monetary bail pending their trial and pending their verdict. So instead of the judge making a subjective evaluation of this person's flight risk, a scoring model is used. And it's not AI, it's a deterministic scorecard that some entities like to hype up as AI. And I'm not accusing the person of doing it, I'm accusing the creators of these systems sometimes of making claims about them which are exaggerated because they want to seem cutting edge. And what really this is, it's an algorithm, but it's a deterministic algorithm. It's not as much of a creative algorithm as the systems that we have been talking about. And there are some questions about perhaps systemic biases built into those algorithms because of the data that are fed into them. So these are essentially statistical models that develop correlations between certain attributes and outcomes, like flight risk. So if you feed data that are, for instance, the result of biased policing practices into an algorithm like that, you're going to get outputs that perhaps reinforce those pre-existing biases. At least that's an argument that has frequently been made. Now, on the other hand, those who...
Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sure that's what she was thinking of.
Yes. Yes.
And that's more easily understood.
I'd like to just quickly go back to this idea about our AI generating art and being used to train the models and all that. And I would like to be really fundamental about art imitates art, okay? Anything I create really isn't completely original. Everything I am and create is based upon something. If you look in the back there, that's rock and roll greats. Those are my mentors. I base my things off that. Gennady has posted this really exquisite video. I don't remember her name, that plays piano, and she explains this.
Alma
really,
Deutscher. Yes.
Yeah, and how even the greats like Mozart, they copied off other people, man. That's the way it works. Art imitates art,
Sure.
That's all I wanted to say.
I wanted to say that there's a statistic that says 70% of Americans hate their jobs. And there's another statistic that says, 50% of the jobs are going away in 5 years. So wouldn't it be great if we could sync those two up? So you're only buying stuff from people that love their jobs. That's the opportunity we have now. It actually should be an immoral act to buy something that was not created as a result of love. And
Interesting.
I think we have that opportunity.
There's an idea of a heuristic corporation, I think is what they call it. I'm not sure exact meaning, but I've heard that around somewhere.
Look that up.
Yes. So the video.
Heuristic, Heuristic. I've seen that word somewhere. I'm not sure what it means.
Yeah. A heuristic is a kind of rule of thumb. It's a general rule that one applies sometimes in situations where one has limited information and limited time to decide.
Sure.
And heuristics can be useful to get at certain answers or courses of action quickly, but they can also be flawed if they don't take into account the full context. And so somebody who relies on quick heuristics all the time may get decent enough results much of the time, but then may get flawed answers some of the time and may miss something. But the video that Jason was referencing is called Are Melodies Unique? And it is by Alma Deutscher. She is a pianist and violinist as well as a composer. So she composed an opera at the age of 10, which I saw her conduct at the age of 17. And she was actually asked this question, wouldn't it be desirable to have an AI algorithm that could check any particular melody to see if it was derivative, to see if somebody else had come upon that melody before. And she stated, well, that would really stifle a lot of creativity because we not only absorb influences from others whose works we had heard, we don't even sometimes recognize that we do it. We do it implicitly. Sure. And there's also a great tradition of composers essentially imitating one another as a form of flattery, but also doing something in addition to the work that they were imitating or paralleling. And this was something that even Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had done. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think the goal of pure originality is an unrealistic goal. And if we hold everyone to that standard, then very few people would create anything at all.
That's true.
Yeah, and the reason we feel like ourselves from day to day is because we're repeating a lot of the majority of the thoughts we had yesterday. There's something called the default mode network. We think about 65,000 thoughts in the course of a day, and about 90% of them or 99% of them are identical to yesterday's thoughts. So we are kind of derivative of ourselves, as if you want to get meta about it.
I'm going to do my best to skew those numbers. It sounds right, though.
Yeah, you better fact check me on that.
Well, I'm disappointed. I've said it several times now that some people didn't know, but you guys have all been excellent guests and you've all been very well spoken. I'm grateful to you all for your part in this podcast. Is there anything more that needs to be said before we wrap up tonight?
I hope this discussion continues. It was really fun.
I'm good. We could talk.
I just thought of one more thing, though. Actually, rather than running against each other, you two are collaborative candidates. Is that right?
Yeah.
And this is some kind of a revolutionary gesture for the THP.
Yeah, I was hoping that there would be at least 5 or 6 other candidates and we could run as a group, run as a team, rather than just one guy, But
And so is this team running in the general election too and probably not going to win, or is it entirely a THB event?
no, we're probably not going to win, but we will put a candidate up.
Awesome. All right. I'm glad.
And, there's a few states that we will try to get on the ballot, or if not right in. But yeah, we're a growing party, and we're hoping this campaign will help us grow even more.
All right. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad we could be of service. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, and my friend Brock has a thing called Debate Tourney, and he's invited all 57 of the minor party candidates to be a part of his internet-based debate system. So that's going to be a lot of fun when
Very good.
it comes together. Proud to open the Overton window wider with all you great minds.
All right. Well, Gennady, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name a couple times. I don't do it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Daniel, good luck to you. Tom, good luck to you. Jason, nice talking to you tonight. Nice talking to you. Aida, thanks for providing the feminine energy for a few moments there. And I hope all our
I
listeners
can
have a
be
good
quiet
time.
sometimes. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a great life and a great rest of the evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Live long and prosper.